This is how I became the world's first legitimate Animal Crossing GameCube billionaire. For nearly 18 years now, Animal Crossing has captured the hearts of players worldwide. Players have been able to legitimately acquire every possible item in the game, except for one, the post model. This item has been considered the holy grail of Animal Crossing games due to the overwhelming amount of time and effort needed to get it by maxing out your bank account at 999,999,999 bells. Now you may be wondering, Brian, are you sure no one's ever gotten this before? I mean, Animal Crossing has a huge fan base. Surely someone in the last 18 years has obtained this item legitimately. That's a valid concern, and if it weren't for the fact that I've been an active member of Animal Crossing forums and communities for the last 14 years, I would agree. However, there's something important that I need to discuss about Animal Crossing. Despite its massive fan base, there's not a lot of people that work on pushing Animal Crossing to its limits. To give some perspective of this, I've participated in achievements and challenges such as 100%ing Animal Crossing, maxing out the HRA score, speedrunning, hacking and modding, reverse engineering, glitch hunting, and basically everything else pertaining to pushing Animal Crossing GameCube to its limits. I've claimed every HRA world record starting early on in 2008 and have held those titles this entire time, and also further improved my score to 663,923 last year in 2019. I also knew how to improve my score the entire time, and I was waiting to see if anyone would improve it, even after announcing I know how to improve it. But no one ever did. I also founded Animal Crossing Speedrunning, and have claimed many world records, such as paying off all your debts, Golden Net, Golden Rod, complete a museum, and many more. Other people have improved these times, and some have surpassed my world records, and some of my world records remain. I also worked with a player by the name of Bowser's Enemy as early as 2008 to start seriously hacking Animal Crossing with Action Replay, learn the ins and outs of the game, and be able to create my incredible Hack Town video on YouTube. I've discovered many glitches for Animal Crossing, including the infamous duplicating items in the house, partial out-of-bounds furniture in the house, restoring spoiled turnips, and a few other ones. I've documented tons of detailed Animal Crossing information, well beyond anything you could find online, that people just haven't documented, at least not until recently. Most recently, I've also worked with Kyler to help reverse engineer Animal Crossing, and there hasn't been a lot of work in that field before us. The reason why I bring all this up is just to show, despite the huge Animal Crossing fanbase, not a lot of people actively work towards pushing Animal Crossing GameCubes to its limits. Despite having a huge fanbase, most players just enjoy playing Animal Crossing casually. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just shows how most people enjoy playing Animal Crossing. While obviously a lack of evidence does not provide evidence that no one has ever done this, the fact that no one has ever posted any evidence of legitimately obtaining the post model online, I can say with 99% certainty that no one has ever done it. And even if none of those arguments compel you, at the very least, I can say with 100% certainty that I am the first person to record this, and even provide any evidence that I'm the first person to legitimately obtain it. The main reason why no one has ever gotten the post model legitimately, even for a casual player, is because of how easy it is to simply acquire it using a Nook code. A Nook code is a built-in feature in the game in which a player may talk to Nook, ask to say a code, and the player is then prompted to input a 28-character code. If the code is successful, Nook will give the player an item based on the code. The reason why I'm not using Nook codes is because it defeats the purpose of legitimately obtaining the post model. But this is how most players obtain the post model in their Animal Crossing playthrough. So why isn't a Nook code considered a legitimate method to obtain the post model then? Well, actually there is a way to make it legitimate. However, one must first acquire the post model legitimately in order to generate a legitimate Nook code. One of the uses of Nook codes is to be able to legitimately send items to another player by talking to Nook and saying, "Here code," and then prompting you to type in the player name and town name of the player you want to send the item to. From there, you give Nook the item, and Nook will spit out a 28-character code that you can then tell your friend or whoever to type in that code, and it applies to their player and town name only. The post model can be distributed using this manner, and this would be a legitimate way to obtain the post model using a Nook code. However, this has never happened before. The other way Nook codes can be considered legitimate are what's known as a few select universal codes. These are codes that Nintendo has sent out through Nintendo Power Magazine and their online website from early on. Finally, the third use of legitimate Nook codes comes from e-reader cards, in which the back of the card comes with at least one password or a Nook code. However, none of these codes that Nintendo officially provided give the player the post model. Another reason why someone could argue that getting a post model through Nook codes is considered legitimate is because the algorithm to generate your own Nook codes, also known as custom codes, has been reverse engineered from the game early on, and anyone can generate their own unique Nook code for any item. However, this is not the intended use of Nook codes, and therefore a custom code is not considered a legitimate means of obtaining an item. So the only possible way to legitimately obtain the post model is to max out your bank account. To get an idea of how monumental of a task this is, imagine a standard day of Animal Crossing gameplay. Perhaps you'll sell your fossils for the day, sell some fruit, you find the golden spot, find the money rock, sell a few items, fish, depending on the season, maybe more or less profitable than other days. Same with bugs. Let's say at the end of the day, after a couple hours of gameplay, you amass 150,000 bells, a reasonable amount. If you had been doing this every day since day one, you would almost have accumulated 1 billion bells. 18 years of day-to-day Animal Crossing gameplay to almost reach this goal. That's how difficult of a task this is. Of course, there are better ways to make money in Animal Crossing, and that's using the stock market. On Sunday mornings, a sow visits your town by the name of Joan. She stays between 6 a.m. to noon, and she'll be selling turnips for a price between 70 to 129 bells. Now, these turnips are good for 1 week, after which they will spoil and be worthless. During this 1 week period, Tom Nook will buy them from you for a certain price between Monday and Saturday that changes day to day. There are 3 different trends that Tom Nook can be buying turnips for: a random trend, a falling trend, or the one we're looking for, a spike. A spike will occur on average once every 10 to 12 days, in which the price Nook is buying turnips is exactly 8 times the value Joan was selling turnips for on the previous Sunday. The net profit from a spike is 7 times the amount of money you spend. So the strategy for making a ton of money in Animal Crossing is actually rather simple. Just play the stock market. Buy turnips for as long as you can every Sunday, and then sell them to Nook when you get a spike. However, if you don't know exactly what you're doing, it's also very easy to lose money. During a falling trend, which happens 20% of the time, the first price on Monday is going to be between 80% to 95% of the price Joan was selling turnips for on that Sunday. And every day after Monday, the price will fall. If you wait to sell your turnips till Saturday, you'll lose nearly 70% of the money you spent on turnips. If you get a random week, there's no way to know when to sell your turnips. However, there is one bit of information that's important to know. Turnip spikes can never occur on Saturdays. Therefore, under almost every circumstance, if you get a random week, and the only way to know if you got a random week is to check the turnip price every day until Friday, you will want to sell your turnips on Friday. Except for one condition. If turnip prices dropped on that Friday, there's a 90% chance they will go up ever so slightly again on Saturday, at which point it's worth the risk to wait until Saturday to sell your turnips. However, in both of these situations, you are selling at a loss. You have just spent hours buying turnips and hours to sell your turnips at a loss. This is a very discouraging situation and has happened to many who have played the stock market. But on the other hand, as soon as you get a spike, you're rolling in the bells. Even though we've known in the past approximately how often a spike occurs, it's only been within the last year we've been able to understand the stock market to such a detailed level and be able to know when to sell the turnips for either the minimal loss or the best profit. Animal Crossing players in the early 2000s, before a lot of this information was known, would have a much harder time profiting off of the stock market. There are other ways to obtain 1 billion bells with a faster method that does not involve the stock market. However, all of these methods involve glitches. There are a few players that have obtained the post model by maxing out their bank account using glitches. The first documented Billionaire using glitches was by a player you may know by the name of RunnerGuy2489 back in 2005. However, he went by a different name back then and was in fact a moderator of AnimalCrossingCommunity.com. Runner Guy wrote a blog in which he explains he obtained about 80 million bells from his use of turnips over the summer of 2005. The remaining 92% of the bells he obtained was through a glitch known as the Island Duplication Glitch. This allows players to duplicate the items on their island and therefore any money they may drop. Now this was still an incredible undertaking and accomplishment. Regardless though, Runner Guy's accomplishment was a huge inspiration for me as I started playing Animal Crossing around this time. The most recent player to have obtained 1 billion bells using glitches is Cold Eggman, who used a similar but different item duplication glitch using traveling data. He finally obtained his billion bells in December of 2019. As impressive as these accomplishments are, no one had yet to have actually earned a billion bells as the developers intended. So I decided, it's time. It's time to do something I've always wanted to do, and to do something no one has ever done before. Legitimately obtain the post model by obtaining 1 billion bells using the stock market in Animal Crossing GameCube. I set up a few ground rules for this challenge to make it a completely legitimate accomplishment while maintaining my streaming schedule. The rules are as follows. No glitches, no Nook codes, one town only, so that way I cannot take advantages of spikes in any other town. And finally, time traveling is permitted by advancing time no more than forward 1 day at a time. The only reason why I allowed time traveling was for the sake of my streaming schedules and my viewers. But because of this, I implemented some important time traveling rules to simulate normal passage of time as accurately as possible, while maintaining the integrity of this challenge. Time traveling can only be done forward in time, just like normal passage of time. And I also added the self-imposed rule to only time travel up to 1 day at a time, so that I would have to play every day like a normal Animal Crossing player. This method of time traveling provides no in-game advantage to the player, other than giving the player the liberty of playing the game at their own pace. Furthermore, the total time spent on this challenge will be roughly the same as playing in real time. You can think of this style of play similar to games such as Harvest Moon, where time is not relative to the time in the real world, but relative to the in-game time. I feel like these rules I've established are fair and adequate to simulate standard passage of time, and I'd say most people agree. Furthermore, I am playing on an entirely Nintendo official setup, including a standard GameCube, standard Nintendo official memory card, and a standard GameCube controller unmodded. With the ground rules established, it's time to start. So I begin my challenge on January 1st, 2020, both in real time and in the game. I want to prepare my town as quickly as possible for buying turnips from Joan. To do so, I'll need a little bit of money to get started. On day 1, I completed chores, accumulated a little bit of money, and moved on. The next day, igloos would appear around town. There's one type of villager, or iglooer in this case, who has a very good money-making game. The villager personality you're looking for is the normal animal villager personality. And if you get that animal in an igloo, you'll be able to play this game where they will buy an item from your inventory for half the amount of money you currently have in your wallet. Now this maxes out at 99,999, so if you can acquire that many bells, you'll be able to sell an item to this villager for 49,999, about 1 every 4 times. This was my initial strategy to make my first $500,000 in Animal Crossing. In about 2 hours, I had accumulated 500,000 bells, and I was ready to start the stock market. I played my first week of the stock market, and lo and behold, I hit a spike. Within the first couple hours, I was already a multi-millionaire. Moving on to week 2, I was starting to clear out my town of trees, or obstacles that would get in the way of the turnips I would be dropping around town, as well as the money I'll be dropping around town. On week 2 of the stock market, I bought turnips for many hours with all the money that I had. And after many hours of buying turnips, it was time to check Tom Nook to see if I got a spike. So I checked 1 day at a time, and I couldn't believe what I saw. Another spike 2 weeks in a row. Within the first couple weeks of my new town, I had already accumulated over 20 million bells. Unbelievable. But 20 million bells is nowhere near 1 billion. It's still 2%. I had a lot more work ahead of me. From here, I could start implementing a very efficient buying and selling turnip strategy. This strategy is important for anyone playing the stock market seriously. One of the caveats to Joan is as soon as you talk to her and you leave the acre, she will leave and relocate somewhere else in town. This is both useful to get her to respawn in a new acre that is more beneficial. However, it can also be detrimental because you'll have to find her over and over again, unless you prepare the money in the acre ahead of time. Based off of the turnip price Joan is buying turnips for, you can calculate how much money you're going to need to bring into the acre to fill up the entire acre and your inventory with turnips. Every acre can hold 256 spots of items, assuming there are no other obstacles in the acre. If you're standing on the edge of an acre, you can also drop turnips off in the adjacent acres, assuming you're not against a cliff. Furthermore, the maximum amount of turnips you can buy in a bundle is 100. So with all these limitations, you'll be able to calculate how many bells you'll need to drop off in an acre in order to buy turnips from Joan without leaving the acre, while also still being able to store all the turnips. And from here, the player can start bringing money in to this acre to get it ready for Joan. However, this is not efficient. It takes about 10 minutes to prepare an acre full of money. But if one were to prepare the acre with money ahead of time, they could eliminate these 10 minutes that would be far more valuable spent on buying turnips. So that's exactly what I do. I prepare all acres within 5 acres of Tom Nook's store with a certain amount of money ahead of time to buy turnips from Joan when she arrives. So I established a cutoff point for the lowest price I will allow buying turnips from Joan for. This price is 100 bells. Under normal conditions, if the turnip price is below 100 bells, I will not buy turnips from Joan, and I will move on to the next Sunday to try again. There are 3 reasons for this cutoff point. The lower the turnip price, the less money you are going to make, assuming time is the limiting factor and not money. For example, if turnips sell for the lowest, 70 bells, the spike for that week will be 560 bells. However, if the turnip price is 129 bells, the spike for that week will be 1,032. The second reason is it's a lot easier to manage the money in the acre when the turnip price is between 100 and 129. The third reason is due to the way money is managed when you buy turnips from Joan. When a player buys turnips from Joan, the money needed to buy the turnips will first come from the wallet. Once there is not enough money in the wallet, the game will check for any bell bags in your inventory. It will then add the remainder money back into your wallet, and the process will repeat. So this can get fairly annoying because you have to pick up the exact amount of money in order to have not too little money. You want to be able to buy 15 bundles of 100 turnips, but you don't want too much money either because that money will then take up spots in your inventory where the turnips would go. So you want to have just the right amount of money. Well, if the turnip price is below 100, the range for just the right amount of money is 100 times the turnip price. And if the price is below 100, this range is going to be below 10,000. And the quantities of bell bags you can take out of your inventory or hold in your inventory are 100, 1,000, 10,000, and 30,000. So if the turnip price is below 100, you'll have to deal with bell bag increments less than 10,000. And that's a lot of very annoying money management, and the time spent in doing so will add up significantly over time. So for those 3 reasons, we are looking for turnip prices of 100 or greater. The reason why I only choose acres within 5 acres of Tom Nook's is due to the fact it takes a rather significant amount of time to run around town picking up these turnips. It takes about 3 seconds to run from one side of an acre to the other in a straight line. Make that a round trip, and that's 6 seconds per acre. That adds up to a lot of time running back and forth between acres thousands and thousands of times. And on that note, it's actually important to discuss the town layout that I have. This town was the first town I happened to generate upon creating my new town on January 1st, 2020. I got very lucky. However, most players do not get lucky. I got Nooks in acre A2 and the post office in acre A4, a perfect setup because that is the least amount of distance to cover between Nooks and the post office. And we're making over 2,000 trips. Even getting the post office in acre A5 would add an additional 6 seconds per trip. That's 12,000 seconds added onto the total time just because of one small change in the town layout. I also have a lot of open space below Nooks, which is perfect for storing turnips. If there was not a lot of space below Nooks, I would have to buy turnips elsewhere, and therefore do more running between acres to move the turnips closer to Nooks. Because my town layout is quite optimal, and the fact that I did not speak to the 7th villager, thus maintaining a minimum amount of villagers in town, and the fact that I chopped down all the trees in town that would act as obstacles, sacrificing the entire town for the sake of making money, I was able to do this challenge in a reasonable amount of time. However, under standard conditions, most players would not make these sacrifices and would have far less than an optimal town layout, thus compounding the time to more than double the amount of time that I spent on this challenge. So with my turnip buying and selling strategy set up, I continued. After 6 hours of buying turnips, I checked Nooks, turnip prices one day at a time. Each day of the week, no spike. Finally, Friday comes, the last day to check, and to my disappointment, the turnip price was 97 bells, a 10% loss. Well, you can't win them all. Since I can't afford to lose all my bells, I sold all those turnips to Nook at a loss. On the bright side though, it doesn't take long to sell turnips if you sell at a loss, because you can sell a full 15 inventories worth at a time. When you get a spike, each bundle of 100 turnips is worth so much, you can only sell a few bundles at a time before maxing out the amount of money you can hold in your inventory. The max amount of bells you can hold in your inventory and wallet is 549,999. This does not include storing bells in your letter inventory because Nook will not automatically place extra bell bags in your letters. If you try to sell turnips to Nook that would give you more bells than you can hold, Nook will not let you sell and you will have to return with less turnips in your inventory. This will significantly affect the amount of time it takes to sell all your turnips depending on the turnip price. So in this instance, after selling my turnips in shame, I brushed it off and went at it again. Another 6 hours of buying turnips. Finally, the time came to check Nooks once again, this time with more intensity and despair with each passing day of no spike. Friday comes yet again. No spike, 2 weeks in a row. And this time I get hit harder and I lose 40% of my total bells. I have lost 10 million of my 20 million bells in 17 hours of wasted time. This isn't anything unexpected though. I knew this would happen at some point, and I had already mentally prepared myself for the situation ahead of time. So I continued onwards. Here we go again. Except this time I don't have enough bells left to spend 6 hours buying turnips. I only have enough for 4 to 5. So 4 to 5 hours of buying turnips later, I return yet again to checking Nooks each day. This time I was hopeful Thursday, March 26th would be a spike because that's my birthday. That'd be a nice birthday gift. But no luck. One final Friday, once again, and once again, no spike, and I'm selling at a loss. 23 hours so far of wasted time, 3 failed spikes in a row. And on to the next week we go. Another hour or so later of finally getting an acceptable turnip price from Joan, another 4 to 5 hours of buying turnips, and another week of checking with Nook. Once again, Friday comes, and once again, it's a bust. 4 failed weeks in a row, and over 30 wasted hours so far. At this point, my steam has run low, my motivation is almost gone, and I'm almost ready to throw in the towel. But I have a little bit left in me, so onwards we go. Back at it again, buying turnips. Another 4 to 5 hours later, and here we go, one day at a time. Still nothing. And once again, we're back at Friday. Friday comes, and here we go. Moment of truth. And 71 bells. Another 40% loss. 5 weeks of losses in a row. But more importantly, 40 wasted hours. Just straight up mashing A and moving turnips for absolutely nothing to show for it. I ended this stream defeated. I was ready to give up and move on with my life, like so many others have playing the stock market. Just another defeated soul on their failed quest to glory. I reflected on the stream that evening while trying to sleep. I thought about all my Animal Crossing achievements, all the discoveries I made, my impact I've had to so many Animal Crossing players. I knew no matter what, I've still done great things for this community. Everything will be okay. Suspended in this moment with just me and my thoughts, something came to me. An idea, a theory, hope, a way to continue my dream. I thought of a way to predict turnip prices, but it's only a theory. Everything would have to perfectly fall into place for this to work. In Animal Crossing GameCube, when you load your town on a new day, a bunch of things have to be randomly set. What will the weather be like today? Where will fossils spawn? What items will be available to buy in Nooks? The list goes on. On Sundays, the turnip price Joan sells turnips for must also be randomly determined. Thanks to my extensive in-game knowledge from working with Bowser's Enemy in 2008 on hacking Animal Crossing, and more recently with Kyler on modding and further hacking Animal Crossing, I knew turnip prices were set for the rest of the week on Sundays. That means if you could look into the game's data on Sunday, you could see what Nook would be selling turnips for Monday through Saturday. Of course, you can't just look into the game code or data. That would require hacking or modding the game, which is cheating, and completely illegitimate. So there had to be another way. So my theory was, if we could determine the RNG seed value at the moment turnip prices were set on Sunday, we could apply this value to a recreation in our own programming language of the turnip price game code functions and be able to predict the turnip price for every day for the entire week. I knew the only way this would work was if the turnip price functions were called only after other functions were called that we could use as inputs to determine the RNG seed at the moment of their creation. But at the same time, the turnip price functions also could not be so far down the list of called functions that we could no longer predict what the RNG seed value would be by the time the game calls the turnip price functions. There had to be essentially a Goldilocks order of functions for this theory to work. I also knew there was only one method in the game that changes the RNG seed besides its initialization when the GameCube is turned on, and this method is called FQRAND. It applies a bit shifting and other mathematical operations algorithm to a global unsigned integer. An unsigned integer is a value with 4.294 billion unique values, or unique RNG seeds, and we had to find a single one. So I got to work. I opened up the Dolphin emulator, and I stepped through the functions that call FQRAND when loading the town on Sunday. If it was early May, windsocks would be placed around town. Second, if a special character was visiting town, their acre would be established. Third, if it was a new month, Nook's lottery items would be set. And fourth, and with a huge relief, all of the items in Nook's shop are set. These items are consistently set every day, randomly, and they're perfect inputs for determining the RNG seed, because you know what the items are. You can see them, you can ask Nook about them. They're already there, they're the perfect inputs. So, the first requirement for the theory to work was in place. The second requirement was the turnip price functions could not be too far down the list to a point we could no longer predict how many RNG seeds were called between our input functions and the turnip price functions. So I continued to step through the functions. After Nook's items are established, next the HRA flavor letter text would be decided, and this could be decided twice. Next, the weather was decided, and then after that, some field rank function I don't really know. And finally, what I've been looking for, the turnip price functions. After several in-game months of testing, I found there was always either 4 or 5 FQRAND calls depending on the HRA flavor letter functions that are called between Nook's item generation and the turnip price functions. That means one could actually reasonably predict turnip prices now by using the items in Nook's store as inputs and then following the chain of FQRAND calls until reaching the turnip price prediction functions. The entire game code for these functions would have to be reverse engineered, and that's where my friend Kyler comes into play. I excitedly told him about my findings, and we set to work on creating a program to predict turnip prices. We worked for the next couple days testing things, reverse engineering code, and ultimately we created a program that can predict turnip prices given all of the inputs needed to determine what the items are in Nook's store. This was absolutely groundbreaking. The inputs that the player would need to provide would be their common, uncommon, and rare furniture, stationery, clothing, carpet, and wallpaper lists. These are lists in the game that are generated upon creating your town. They never change, but they will vary for everyone. The purpose of these lists was to make certain items more common to find in a given town. Nintendo's idea behind this was to encourage players to trade with each other to obtain items they just can't seem to get on their own in their own town. However, you can actually balance out the probability of these 3 different item lists to equal out in your town by either getting a good luck with furniture fortune from Katrina, or by improving the feng shui in your house. You can place red furniture items on the east side of your house to improve what's known as your goods power. You can also opt to place special feng shui items anywhere in your house to accomplish the same effect. You actually only need 10 of these items to max out your goods power, so it's not hard to do at all. But you do need to know what the item lists are, so to figure out what your common, uncommon, and rare item lists are in your town, you need to reduce your goods power to 0, which is easy to do, just remove any feng shui items in your house. And from here, just keep track of which Nook furniture, stationery, clothing, carpets, and wallpapers you get during your standard gameplay. Reference the item list master list and tally which item list A, B, or C each item is in. With a base 0 goods power, you have a 60% chance to obtain a common item, 35% chance to obtain an uncommon item, and a 5% chance to obtain a rare item. Now be careful, if you have Nookway or Nookingtons, each day a spotlight item will appear in the shop, which is also the item Nook tells you about in his daily letters, and the spotlight item will always be pulled from your town's rare list. Other than that, after enough data, you'll be able to figure out your item lists. From here, now, just provide inputs for your current date, which Nook shop you have, the previous week's turnip trend, your goods power, and you'll be able to predict turnip prices. Now I know what you're thinking, Brian, is this really considered legitimate since you're using a computer program to calculate turnip prices for you? I completely agree with this statement, so I came up with another idea. I came up with an encyclopedia that allows you to flip to a page, as if you're referencing the world's greatest Animal Crossing guide, and find an entry of furniture and stationery items with the corresponding Sunday turnip price, and the day of the week the turnip spike will fall on. Here's a page of 5,000 alphanumerically organized entries with the first entry enlarged at the top. You're going to need about 88,000 more of these pages to make a complete turnip price spike prediction encyclopedia. And using a 600 DPI high quality printer, one could print this off, squint really hard, and be able to read each entry. With proper alphanumerical organization, it actually wouldn't take very long to find your unique entry. You can quickly narrow it down to the page with the first 2 furniture items alone. I've actually already created a 60 gigabyte text file of all 8.5 billion different entries, but I have yet to actually run down to my local Kinko's and ask them if I could use their highest quality printer to print off 170,000 pages of this. So if anyone wants to fund that expense, hit me up. Of course, I wouldn't need to do this if I was one of the people on this planet with hypermemory who could just memorize every one of these entries. Sadly though, I'm not one of these people, but they are fascinating if you want to Google them. There's actually one final very important piece of information regarding predicting turnip prices, and that's the fact you can't time travel using the in-game clock. If you were to time travel through the character start screen, the turnip prices will re-roll, and all that hard work of predicting turnip prices will be for nothing. And the reason why this happens is because the turnip price functions actually get called again if it's Sunday, even before the villager greets you on the character start screen. That means you can't even save and quit and reload your town on that same Sunday, or else the turnip prices for the rest of the week will get re-rolled, and there would be no way to predict those prices. The only way to get around this caveat is to either not time travel and wait in real time for the spike to occur, which isn't actually a problem, but you can also change the system clock forward, which is effectively like not time traveling at all. Once you get to Monday though, the turnip price functions will no longer get called at the beginning of the start screen. So with my newfound glitchless, legitimate turnip price predicting power, I was equipped to finish this challenge stronger than ever. As long as I was careful and knew exactly what I was doing, I would never lose bells again. No more 40-hour time losses, no more despair. I was ready to become the world's first legitimate Animal Crossing billionaire. And so I was off. The only RNG left to deal with was finding an acceptable Sunday turnip price from Joan, 100 bells or higher. So the grind begins anew. I'm still nearly 1 billion bells away, but this time, we're only going up. I just have to put in the hours, so let's do this. The big day has arrived. Hope everyone's as excited as I am. Of course, I'm gonna have a montage of like every VOD at some point. And it's almost finally coming to a conclusion. 999 million. Here we go. Okay. It maxes out. Let's go! Wait. There we are. Alright, we hear this? We good? We dancing? Let's do this! Oh man, my computer's slow. Hopefully we're good. Go! Yeah! Money! 1 billion bells! Let's go! Oh man, my chat is so crazy right now. Let's go, everyone! Yeah! Yeah, I'm scared about my computer. Yeah! 1 billion! And there we are, everyone. We did it. And that's that. We are billionaires, everyone.